Welcome to the smartest people in the room. We are glad you are here, and just by showing up today, you're already demonstrating your very own smarts. Today, I'm thrilled to present two guys who are longtime friends who both share a deep passion for data and its importance in the world. And both of these guys have made data and its power a central part of their successful careers in the music industry. Not only are they two of the smartest people in this room, but they're also two of the nicest. And I promise you will leave smarter and more enlightened than you arrived. Before we get started, please let me take care of some business. First, to the audience, please feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat window. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work they do day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. Many of you know that I am a music industry headhunter. I run the music practice at Turnkey ZRG, and I place music executives in roles throughout the industry. So by definition and function, I help people connect with companies. In this series, my goal is to help you make more connections, and I invite you to take full advantage of that opportunity. Specifically, I invite you to engage with the speakers and the other attendees in the chat of the Zoom. Please introduce yourselves, share your LinkedIn profile, say hello to your friends, and make some new ones. And ask questions of our speakers. We will try to address as many of those as possible during the session. Also, please make sure your chat is set to address everyone, not just the host and speakers. I want to thank our program sponsors, for without their support, we could not keep this series free. Special thank you to First Horizon Bank, Turnkey ZRG, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, MedJet, Tennessee Brew Works, Project Music, and Better Than Booze. By the way, a quick note about MedJet, which is the #1 rated international transport, medical transport, and security response membership for travelers. If you travel a lot, trust me, you need to look into this. So let's get down to business. In today's host seat, we welcome Dr. Charlie Apigian. Charlie, I hope I got that right.
Oh, you screwed it up. All right. We got it good now. Oh, that's okay. It sounded good, but it's Apigian.
Apigian, thank you. Thank you. I won't do that again.
No problem.
Charlie is a professor and co-host of the Data for All podcast, public speaker on AI and data, and a community leader that looks to bring data, artificial intelligence, and real-world problems together to solve problems such as health inequities, human trafficking, burglary prediction, and mental health in youth. He believes that everyone should be empowered to think different with data and have the data skills to complement and enhance what they are already doing. Charlie has published over 30 papers in data and technology journals, is a prolific speaker, sits on several nonprofit and for-profit boards, and is the recipient of the Nashville Technology Council Data Scientist of the Year in 2020 and a Nashville Technology Council IT Community Leader of the Year in both 2018 and 2023. Welcome, Charlie. It's so nice to have you with us.
Thank you much, Tom. I appreciate it.
And joining Charlie as today's featured guest is my old friend, Chris McMurtry. Rather than my customary read of his bio, I'm going to let Chris share some breaking news about his career. Just know this, he's a guest that I have coveted on this platform for quite some time, and I could not be more pleased that he has chosen this opportunity to share this important update with our audience. It is my pleasure to welcome these two rock stars to our platform today. Take it away, boys.
All right. Wait, Chris, do you have something to say today? We got to let you do some type of bio for you. Let's go. What's going on?
Well, we could skip the bio. There's
come on, you're a big deal.
Not a ton important there, other than to take note that I've been fortunate enough to get to be in the room with the smartest person in the room, which wasn't me, but it has served me very well, and I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, I do have some I guess bittersweet news. Bitter in the sense that I am no longer, or I'm resigning from my role as VP of Product at PEC. And I am now VP of Product at Artist Growth, which is where I am now. I'm in the offices of Artist Growth. But PEX has been incredible. and has definitely been in line with my personal mission. But what we're planning to do at Artist Growth is equally, if not more so, in line with that mission. So
Okay, well, I'm gonna force you to do your bio, but I'll have to ask you the questions and pull it out of you. So you were at PEX for how long?
I was at PEX 26 months.
Okay.
So yeah.
And what does PEX do? I know most people probably know, but not everybody. PEX is a company that does.
Yeah, so PEX is a ACR, automatic content recognition technology. In music, we would think of it as MRT, music recognition technology. PEX's superpower is that they're able to find use of content throughout the internet, even if that content has been sped up, slowed down, short samples, modified in any way. So as music has, we're now in trillions of streams and, over 100 million songs being released each month. PEX is able to find it. PEX is also able to find covers or live versions. And so it's incredibly important. Hey, Tom, it's instead of PEX card, it's going to be just PEX.com.
And so tell me, you said artist, the word artist growth, right? So
Yeah.
artist growth. You're going over there. So is there a difference between the two companies or what?
Yeah.
Okay.
So artist growth is first off, it's a 14-year-old company. I have about 28,000 users of the software. And it's been primarily being used for touring. But what it has become and where we plan on taking it is basically the hub for growing your career in music. So think of it like a Monday.com or Asana.com, but specific to music. And so, and if you're familiar with, and yes, Matt Ermey is a badass. Speaking of smartest person in the room, that's Matt. But yeah, so with a Monday.com or an Asana.com, if you can imagine that software, right, where you are getting everyone on the same page, but specific to music. So now you can see where my experience in matching and resolving and attributing data is really going to help with that, because we're pulling in profiles from a lot of different places. So not just touring, right? So maybe you are a producer or a beat maker, and you're wanting to know like all the places that your beat is being used, right? Or maybe you're collaborating with someone, and I'm like, hey, Charlie, I've got this basic guitar track down. You go in and you add your stuff. I'm able to coordinate that with you. But what it's being used for right now, primarily, is touring. So it keeps the artist and the booking agent and the manager and the label and the publicist and the venue and the security at the venue, everyone all on the same page. They're all able to use a single app to basically keep up with the tour. It also handles expenses, right? So you can really budget whatever project you're working on, whether that's a tour or a new release, or maybe you're a sync composer and you need to know all the places that it's being placed and what it costs you to actually produce that and to get it there. And then you can understand, all right, how do I run my business all the way from DIY to the majors, which all use Artist Growth.
Gotcha. Well, so we're going to do this evolution within this. We're not going to go to the talk about your LinkedIn the whole time, right? We want to get deeper than that. And I think it's, so I've had the pleasure of getting to know Chris in a different way. And so most people, that are probably on here, if you know Chris, you know him in the way that is probably from the music side or the business side. We have this other thing that has made us good friends. And so we're going to talk about a little bit of our passions. And I think what you're going to notice is everything that Chris has done, everything that I have done in my career is because of passion. And so we want to get back to that. So probably the theme for today is you're going to see two guys very passionate for what they do. And we've made some mistakes over those years, right? But we knew what we wanted to do. And so that is what I think is where we're going to lead. So I think we do a little bit of, the personal stuff. So, if people know me, and I see I've got some of my students on here, and I just want to say thank you and hello to everybody that is on today. Thank you for taking the time. And if you're one of my students, I'm sorry you had to listen to me last night and now you have to listen to me today. Please, I'm sorry about that. But what they saw last night was incredible passion. When I talk about this stuff, I get going. One of the other things that we have a passion for, you did one of the gestures. Look at that. Is we've had this shared passion for running, and we started talking about it. We always said we wanted to go for a run, and then you just came up to me one time and said, "Hey, I'm going to go run 100 miles. You want to come with me?" And of course, I said, "Sure," right? And so now you ran the 100 miles. I crewed you during that time, but where did that passion for running come from?
Well, dude, from those mistakes you were just talking about, that we make from time to time. I was going through a very bad bankruptcy with my first company, also a very public bankruptcy, and it was stressful. It was really, really stressful, and I was not suicidal, but I remember during that dark time, like thinking, "Oh, that's where that can come from." And so I started like having those thoughts of just like it would be easy to just end it, right? And it scared me. My daughters were probably about 10 and 13 at the time, and it really scared me. And so I started running to deal with that stress. And what was interesting is when I was like, out on the trails or running, like everything I was stressed about, I'd start to figure out, right? You just kind of start running and you get in that zone, and things become clearer. And so without really meaning to, I would end up running, 15, 20 miles just because you're not thinking about running. You're running and just kind of in that place, right?
Yeah.
And so then I was like, well, I should run a race. And this is going to sound ridiculous, but I didn't even know there was such a thing as a 5K or a 10K. Every time I'd heard of a race, I'd heard of a marathon. So I signed up for the Nashville Marathon and the Music City Marathon. And I ran that and I did okay. And then, somebody said, "You should go for a sub-4." And I was like, "What does that mean?" And they were like, "Well, you finished the marathon in less than 4 hours."
There you go.
So I did that, and then it just kind of became this, what's next? And when you get our age, you hit that peak of how fast you can run quite quickly, right?
And so you don't get faster, you get slower.
No,
time,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. So I was like, well, if I can't run fast, maybe I can run far. And so I did a 50K, and that went well. Then I did a 60 miler, and had my sights set on the Georgia Jewel, and in Georgia. Beautiful trail on the Pinhoti Trail. And I've always had a passion for hiking. I love being outdoors, so I really wanted to be in trails. And but it was I knew it was going to be a challenge, with 16,000 feet of vertical gain across the 100 miles.
Yeah.
And so I knew I would need help, and you were gracious enough to give it to me.
Yeah. There were a whopping 2 of us, and I ran. I think I did 25 of the miles with you. and it 36 hours, right? 36 hours. Didn't
Yeah,
sleep.
36 hours, 19 minutes and 20 seconds.
Yeah.
And so don't give me too many kudos. The cutoff was 36 hours. So I
Yes,
missed the
but
cutoff by 19 minutes. But
yeah,
they
we don't
still
remember
gave me
that.
the
We
belt
remember you
buckle.
finished,
Right.
and
Yeah.
we were there with you, and then we enjoyed a little bit of bourbon after that and everything. And then I think it was 2 days later. By the way, Tom, do I have rights to share here? Let's
Oh
see.
no.
No, if you give it to me, I could show a picture of us from the trail. And then also, I think it was 2 days later, you came to my class and spoke. And were
Right. I'm like
gracious enough.
hobbling in.
Oh
Right.
yeah, absolutely. And we had a good time. Yeah, my running journey started back when I lived in Michigan still. So this would have been like 1999. And it was always I hope I can do a 5K. And I ran my first mile. I remember I had an English bulldog at the time, Madison, big, fat, beautiful dog, but she could run a little bit. So we went out and did our first mile, and it was 12-minute pace. And I was like, wow, I'm fast, you know? At this time, I weighed about 235 pounds at the time. So we just had a couple of kids, and I felt I needed to outeat my wife. But I was also in the car industry, and every day I was taking people out to dinner, and it was or lunch, and then I had to bring donuts, and like to this day I still can't even smell a donut because of my car industry days. And all of that is what led me to running. So I went from 235 down to about 160, and I've been between 160, 170 ever since. And then I started getting slow. I did triathlons. I've been a race director for over 55 races because I love the data. I love the logistics. I love how everything kind of tied together. And then it was like, well, might as well try a running race. So I'll tell you my first ultra real quick. It'll be a quick story. It was the Strolling Jim 41.2 miler down in Wartrace, Lazarus Lake. So if you ever hear the Barclays marathons, he's the guy that puts that on. And so he lives just south of us here. So I signed up for it. I'm trained as best I can be. And it rains for 3 straight days to the point where the entire Wartrace area is under like a foot of water everywhere. So my dad, who's now 80, so we're talking, you know, a good 10 years ago, he was about 70. He's like, this is bull. I don't want you to do that. And I'm with my son at the time, who was, again, 10 years ago. So about, he was probably about 12 years old. So it was about 12 years ago. And the three of us, and I get to the start line, and my dad goes, you can't do this. I'm like, you know what, Dad, you're right. I'm going to hurt myself. I might as well go. So we start taking off, going the other way, leaving. And I look at my son and I say, Jacob, am I doing the right thing? And he goes, Dad, you have to run. You got the t-shirt. And I go, turn it around. And we turned around. I started 15 minutes late.
And that's why we do it, is for the t-shirt. Like,
it's and the beer afterwards, of course.
Exactly.
And which I couldn't do, but I ran, never stopped, past 77 of the 99 people in the race. And it was a torrential downpour the entire time. And that was my first experience in an ultra. Now I'm just happy I get out for a run. Running for me is now mental instead of physical. It is my outlet because it's that thing where I'm so much go. The one time I can think on my own, the one time where I can think for like 30 minutes straight is on a run. And I like you said, that deep meditation, it's the only time I have, and I will never sit and do that. And so now I'm to the point where I'm writing notes, you know, on my watch because I'm getting ideas, right? And then I come back and I'm like, here's my crazy idea, and we go from there. So that's one of our passions. Now let me go to your other passion and go back in life. You loved music, and what was the driving thing for you? What did you do early on? Because you're a musician in what way? Like, is there a certain genre that you?
Yeah, I'm a classical composer.
Okay, I think
And
that's amazing.
it sounds a lot more impressive than it is. You just put the word classical in front of it, and it's like, oh, I don't listen to classical, but I hear it's cool, right? So is the general response, right? But it sounds impressive because you associate it with like Beethoven and Mozart and Bach. I am not them. I like to say I organize sound and silence. And if there are any classical fans out there, my heroes are like Penderecki, which if you've seen The Shining, that's Penderecki, right?
Okay.
If you've seen he did a piece called Victims or Threnody for the Victims of Hiroshima, and it's just like this screeching, right? Yeah. But as far as music goes, I was born and raised here in Nashville. I know a lot of us are here in Nashville, and I was just always in music growing up. Like, for example, like Ricky Skaggs, if you know the bluegrass legend Ricky Skaggs, like his kids were on my school bus, and right, and so like you're just surrounded by it, and you go to your friends' dad's studios, and you're just like like making noise and recording things when they aren't using it. And I remember my first trip outside of Tennessee was I went with my cousin to Oklahoma, and I was looking for the guitars in the house that we were at, right? And I was like, it surprised me that like not everybody had musical instruments in their house, right? So I always grew up around music. I was fortunate enough that I was, doing session work early on, and then touring early on. And there you go, Jeff. That is absolutely correct. And so I was always in music, and it was while I was on tour that I decided I wanted to be a composer. One of the guys in the band had gotten an iPod, and we were able to listen to more than the handful of CDs that we would carry with us. And so we started loading just like everything, like everybody put their stuff on there, and somebody had put Arvo Pärt on there, and I heard Arvo Pärt for the first time, which is an Estonian composer, and it hit me. I was just like, this is what I was born to do. And so at the end of that tour, I pretty much let the band know that I was going to go to school to be a composer. And so I didn't go right out of high school. I toured for a while, and then I got a degree in classical music composition, and was just composing like prolifically every day. Was going to go get my master's at Princeton to get to actually study with Paul Lansky, who studied with Penderecki. But I also met my wife in college, and so she starts asking questions like, what are you going to do after you get your master's? What are you going to do after you get your doctorate?
What she's asking is, how are you going to get paid, is what
exactly
she's asking, right?
Yeah. And so I get frustrated, and I'm like, the only company I'll ever work for is Apple, and or I would ever work for is Apple.
There you go.
And she was like, okay, apply. And so I was kind of stuck then, and so I did, and lo and behold, they hired me. And the work that I ended up doing at Apple was mostly data related, specifically inventory management. Like when you go into a Genius bar, it's capturing that serial number, right? And it's tying that back to the assembly line so that they're pulling the computers that have a defect, right? And a ton of data goes into that. And so I fell in love with data, much like I fell in love with classical music. And so that's how I got involved.
Now I don't know how long you were at Apple, but you also got to go to set up retail stores for the Genius Bar, or was it the retail stores in general? What was that part of?
Yeah, I actually started as an inventory control specialist in the store. We opened the Green Hill store here in Nashville.
Gotcha.
And I guess I was doing a good job at that. They started asking me to go out and train others, inventory control specialists. And it was while doing that I was working closely with a lot of folks from Cupertino, specifically the IS&T, or Information Systems and Technology team. And they were like, you should come work for us. And I was like, oh, okay. And so then the retail stores became our product, right? So I spent a ton of time out in Cupertino, I ended up opening 36 stores worldwide.
Oh, wow. What
And
was the most fun? Where'd you go that was like, whoa, look at that?
yeah, so the most fun was I got to train and do the systems for the Rome team. So Roma Est was the
Oh,
store. However, as everyone I'm sure knows, Apple's very secretive, right?
mhm.
So we actually trained that team and did all the systems in the Birmingham, England store. And it's called the Bullring. There's a phenomenal architecture mall there. So I was training the Rome team in Birmingham, and I was so excited about that. I was there for weeks, right? But the reason I was excited, I was like, I'm going to be in Birmingham. And so maybe I'll get to meet like Led Zeppelin. So I'm like looking for Robert Plant and Jimmy Page. And the reason I bring that up is because, like, of course, over the weeks I was there, I never ran into them on the street. But the week I got back, I ran into Robert Plant here in Nashville.
Oh my gosh. That's something
Yeah.
typical, right?
Right.
So yeah, I love that. So you got your data chops. Now you have this love for classical, and was after Apple, was that when you had the idea for a business?
No, not quite yet. Actually, so when Steve got sick the second time, he called an all hands, and we're all there together, and it's clear it's like the end.
Uh,
And he yeah, it was really sad. It was also really inspirational, because if he's like, I just want to thank you all. He's
mm,
like what we've done here has been incredible, but what you're going to do is going to be even more incredible. And he was like, if you were put on this planet, these are his words, not mine. If you were put on this planet to do that, then do it. He's like, but I know many of you are here and you have your own thing you want to do, and that is what you were put on the planet to do. So you need to go
wow.
do that. And of course, it was like this dagger, right? Right in my heart. And I was like, what in the world? How am I going to get to work in classical music? Like, this makes no sense. Like, I know that's what I'm supposed to do, and I know that that's what's like Steve's words spoke to me. But working in classical music and technology, that doesn't exist, right?
Didn't exist back then for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
not at all. And actually, I get a call from someone who's on the I see him here all the way from London. Jeff Van Drill reaches out, and he was like, "Hey, I hear you know classical metadata. We need your help." And so Jeff at the time was COO of Naxos,
Mm.
which is the largest distributor of classical music. He went on to become CEO and is now at Concord. But Naxos was missing street dates for like 600 labels because of bad metadata, right?
Gotcha.
And we solved that problem in really relatively short order. And so I then wanted to automate that, and it was clear that wasn't going to happen at Naxos. And so I actually left Naxos because a professor of mine wanted to start a classical record label. And I was like, Mike, that's a really bad idea. Like, this is like
How are you going to
2014,
make money?
2015.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, starting a record label this day and age is a bad idea. Starting a classical record label is a really bad idea. And he was like, no, this is what I'm going to do. My mom left me all this money. But she told me I have to use it for my music. And so we started that record label, and we did 22 releases in the first year. And when I say releases, yes, of course, it's classical, so it's CD as well,
Sure.
especially at the time. But we needed to get it into digital stores, and I was like, well, let's use Naxos, right? And so we go to use Noxos, and because of the systems I put in place, they were going to take a insane rev share, you know,
Way to go, Chris.
for that, which maybe I should have taken because I knew we weren't going to make much money anyway, right? You know, but
Yeah.
but I was like, no, we're not going to do that. Let's just build our own, right? You know, so we ended up building what ended up being known as Dart. And that was basically what Billboard called TuneCore for classical. So it was a independent, do-it-yourself distribution platform specific to classical, and that went really well until it didn't.
Gotcha. And then from there, Exactuals was after that.
Yeah. So after Dart went through a bankruptcy, fortunately, the judge ruled that I could compete with whoever purchased the assets of Dart. And so we rebuilt it, and we called it Ray, or royalties.ai. And one of our customers was Exactuals, and Exactuals, thank you, Wally. The man responsible for this next sentence I'm about to say just commented. So Exactuals acquired Ray, and then months after that, like literally like 4 to 6 months after that, Exactuals was acquired by City National Bank. So I like to joke that I went from bankruptcy to being a banker in a matter of months.
Oh, that's great. And so then, of course, things have happened. There's a lot of ups and downs during that time. There's obviously highs, there's lows, and yes, we'll talk about my boring story at some point. But I'm more interested in you because this is more of the
doesn't
music.
need to be the CMAC show.
I love it. Well, you know, you don't put me at the mic, and it's going to happen that way. During the highs and the lows, what gets you through things like that? Because, you know, we've got a lot of people, especially when I see, I've got a lot of students right now that are focused on music, but you know, they're learning the music business side of it, and they're embracing data because they have no choice if they want to get a grade this semester. But there's times where starting a business is the worst thing you can do because it's so hard. Yeah. I think it's so, it has to be said, there's nothing harder than starting your own business in an area that's brand new. You were doing things that is like for classical music, and it had to be out of love. What gets you through those kind of things?
Yeah. I think it's important to know, like what you are passionate about, to know why you were put on the planet. I do believe every one of us has a purpose, and we were put on this planet to do something specific. And at the core of that is loving others, right? And striving to make others' lives better. And like I see it in you as well, Charlie. I mean, you're an educator, right? It's there's nothing more satisfying than making someone's life better, right? And so that's the first part. The second part, unfortunately, I learned going through the bankruptcy, and it was a very public bankruptcy with a lot of press behind it and stuff like that. And what I got out of that was that nobody was thinking about me as much as I thought they were.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Right? Yeah. It's just like,
especially during the bad times, you think everybody's thinking things about
totally
you.
Right.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
So that was really helpful, right? Just knowing that, like, hey, I am not the center of everyone's world, right? Therefore, like, they're doing their own thing, and so that was helpful, and as well. And I tell that to my daughters often, like when they're like, "It's so embarrassing." I'm like, I guarantee you, they haven't thought about it again, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good point. I get to always think about if I stay genuine, life goes good. And the minute I deviate or I don't feel comfortable, it never goes right for me. And so it's about being true to yourself a lot of times. And And I love that. Yeah, I'll give a little bit about who I am. Why am I on this? Honestly, I'm a data person. I am not a music person. These are props. Uh, Data, there you go. Data is a mission. And they're not props. They're actually awards. Actually, I saw Brian Moyer on here a while ago, and through the Nashville Technology Council. I've been very active in the Nashville community in the data and tech space. And then I have a lot of friends. I mean, I think we met probably in 2017. It was right before I started the Data Science Institute at MTSU, but I've never felt like an academic. I've just been in it. And why? I like to change lives. I like to make an impact. And my superpower is taking hard stuff and making them sound simple. It's pretty simple as that. And I like data. I mean, that can go back for me to the 1984 Detroit Tigers, and I could name off everything, but I got into stats. I went all the way through getting a PhD in basically statistics. And then I came down to Middle Tennessee. You're a Middle Tennessee grad, right?
Yes, sir.
That's right. And so I taught at MTSU for 20 years, but I was car industry before that. And I had the luck of, the internet was just happening. And I made a very small little company in Detroit look like $10 million online. And which was my dad's business, which was in bankruptcy. And we took it out. And then he sold for a good amount of money and still living on those savings. And I knew I didn't want to stay in the car industry. It was awful in Detroit at the time. And I remember my dad looking at me and he goes, "So what the hell do you want to do?" Excuse my language. And I go, "I think I want to teach." And he goes, "Well, you dummy, go do it." And I was like,
Yeah.
Okay. It was like my Rocky moment. I was like, he said I could go do it. I'm going to go do it. And never looked back. We had little kids. We moved to Tennessee. We had 2 kids at the time. Then all of a sudden we had 4. We knew nobody. My wife and I raised 4 amazing kids. But at that time, I started doing community level projects. And how do you take data and turn it into action? And so now I feel like I'm always trying to talk the gospel about the right way to use data. It's gotten me in trouble in academia. And I don't mean that in a bad way. It's just I'm trying to change academia, and sometimes it doesn't want to be changed. And so, but I'm going to keep trying because I have this passion for the students as well as the community to make those changes. Because I'm assuming you feel the same way. I think of, it's not the little person, but it's like, I'm thinking that I want to change that person's life. And it could be 30 minutes I spend with them, and it does that. And you may not know the classical composer that you're helping, but I bet you're thinking about them, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And which reminds me of, I don't know if anyone's read Rick Rubin's book that he just put out. I highly recommend it. He talks about a lot of this. But Charlie, if you don't mind, something I would love to dig into for a minute.
Sure.
And it's something that really, I think we were on the Swanee Trail. We were running, and that's another thing about running is when you run with others, you have a ton of time to talk. And if you can talk while running, you're going at the right pace.
That's right.
So just a tip there if anyone's wanting to get into running. But yeah, I remember on this one run we were doing, you were talking about data as like basically data for all, right? And I love that mission you have of, making data simple, pointing out like, hey, we're all using data every day.
Yeah.
When Tom asked me, like who would you want to be on this with? You were literally my first thought. And the reason for that is exactly what you're talking about in helping others, but specific to data. And I remember on that run, just like you would, part of what you were describing, what I heard is just like you would get, you have math as a prereq, you have, like even PE as a prereq, right?
Yeah.
All these requirements that you have to graduate, right? Like that data should be that, like everyone should graduate being able to write a SQL query or to, do a pivot table. And I was just like, I remember the light bulb going off. I was like, dude, you are 1,000% right. So I know that you were just alluding to some of the challenges in education. What do you think we need to do to make it to where, like, if you graduate from a university in the United States, that you leave knowing that, right?
Yeah, and to me, I go more to the mindset now. It's an approach, and it's not, you don't have to become a technical genius. You have to embrace that you're using data. And you think about my definition of data is again pretty simple. It's a capturing of an imperfect view of reality. We use data to describe what's happened in the world because it's hard to measure things like our normal goals. Like if I was to say your goal in it's to merge technology and classical music and help people get paid for the work that they're doing. All right, how do you quantify that, right? How do you quantify that? Well, you have proxies for that data. Just like me for running, I think, well, I want to be fast. Okay, what does that mean? Fast to what? A snail, to a turtle, to Usain Bolt? It's a big difference, right? And so you're always using this proxy. So I want people to just, if they can get that mentality first, then they get curious to want to use a pivot table, to want to do these other things. But I've noticed I have failed when I'm trying to force it on people, but instead just have good conversations with data. And so to me, I storytell, and I do it by, when I talk about data, I make sure that it's something that people can understand, simple. If I say 55%, I'm going to say that's 5 out of 9, right? So people understand what 55% means.
Yeah,
I'm going to
great.
make sure I understand my audience, and I'm not going to talk over them because I don't need to sound smart. I need to get a point across. And so that's where I am these days. And so I love this idea of, I just want to do things smarter, more efficiently, and I want to go to bed at night. And if I'm always doing mundane tasks manually and not using data and making mistakes, I don't never be able to sleep at night. And so it's pretty simple. If I can sleep at night, I know that's my measure for success, right? He's going to get I thought you're going to get the cool thing. There you go. See if you got there we go. All right. And so that, to me now, when I talk about this with others, when I talk about it with you, with our friends, but more importantly, with those students, last night I couldn't go to bed, and because I got home so inspired from talking to my class. And it was simple. We were looking at Airbnb data and talking about how to use it in an effective way to help a grandmother, right? And the stuff that they come up with is so much more innovative when they think in a data-driven way, having that mindset. So that's my mission these days, is to talk about data in a way where people go, well, wait a minute, I'm using data right now. We're talking, we are processing information, our experiences. And so when we start talking even about like artificial intelligence, yeah, it's changing the world, but we're pretty special still, right? The data that I have through experiences, through my 5 senses, as well as written word and song and video, is still different than an artificial intelligence or a Gen AI large language model, right?
Yeah.
And so getting that across, the human side of data, to me is really important. So anyways, I get preachy. I love that topic. I knew you had to set me up for that. You did that on purpose. But that love is where I come from. And it gets me in trouble because that's a huge shift. I'm talking K through 12. I'm talking kids in 3rd grade need to think different, all the way up throughout. And we're starting to do that, and it's starting to happen. That, to me, is where I love to spend my time. I want the most impossible mission, and that's to empower others to think different with data. It's pretty simple. That's my mission in life, just like you have yours. Yeah. And so I do that. And how I do that is data for all, yes, but I like to do good with it as well, and help in underrepresented areas, health inequities, identify things. The data doesn't lie. We only interpret it maybe in a different way. And then when I do that, I notice, especially the younger generations, they get on board, they want to do it too. So, and by the way, as you start, if you hear anything and you have a question, we're gonna look. You don't have to just say nice things about CMAC. All right, you can actually ask us a question as well. Oh, Mark is here, a good friend of both of ours. And so tell me more on the horizon. So whether it's from the technology standpoint or from the you standpoint, for what you expect your new move to help you do, or to help you achieve what you want to do.
Yeah, so I'm very excited about where we are as a music industry. I'm excited about where we are as a creative society. We're going to be at 1 billion creators soon, which is insane to think that, like back to data, that's 1/8 of the population, right?
Wow.
It's crazy.
Now, do you mean music, or do you mean any type of creator?
Any type of creator. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. If you look at just music today, you're looking at around 160 million, which is still a lot, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So what I am passionate about, and what is on the horizon, and what I know Ermi here at Artist Growth aims to accomplish, is to make payment happen, right? For attribution to happen, for payment to happen, for an artist, regardless of where they are on the scope of things, to be able to be identified, to be attributed, right? Hey, there's another bubble. But also to get paid for that, right? And so what we're interested in is building the tool that enables your career, regardless of where you are on that spectrum, right? And so that's what the future holds.
Gotcha.
For me, and it's that same mission I've been on since Steve put a dagger through my heart. So
yeah, and so what I just heard is you want the creators to create, and then let that. So if you think about this new world of ours, artificial intelligence is more than just creating cute pictures online through a DALL-E 3 or something like that. Mm-hmm. It is this new engine for creation, to create text and images and music, but it's also a way to reduce the repetitive tasks that we have to do a lot of times. And so, the musician that has to spend half of their day doing the logistics stuff of it, and because not everybody can afford the big roadie show, right? I think any tools that can help an accountant to be an accountant, a musician to be a musician, an author to be an author is great, and I think that's an interesting future. That's the kind of stuff when I think of, and what I want, as we start getting into these new tools, they're still relying on good data, right? Because you can't get people paid if the data isn't there. If it's, I think the interesting thing when you think about classical music is those aren't like 2-word titles, are they? They're
yeah,
they're like 50 words, right?
Well, that was the thing, is I would never advise someone to necessarily start with the hardest problem first. It was the passion that drove me there, but I didn't realize at the time that by starting with classical, I was starting with the hardest problem, right? So instead of Taylor Swift, 1989, Shake It Off, right? We were dealing with Ludwig van Beethoven, Symphony No. 3 in E flat major, Opus 55, Eroica, Movement No. 1, Allegro con brio, as conducted by, as performed by, right? It's just like all of this metadata, and that was simply just because I wanted a way to distribute my music, to distribute my professor's music, right? Everything that was coming out on our record label. And so we had no choice. But it's by focusing on that hard problem, it made a lot of the other problems, which are much more important. I don't mean as an industry more important, of that are problems, like, if we talk about the MLC, unclaimed royalties, or what we often refer to as the black box.
Yeah.
Right. Matching master recording and publishing information. If you can resolve the conflicts within, the Beethoven example I just gave, it makes matching master recording and publishing much easier. And I can't take credit for that. Like, I was actually, the EC, the National Entrepreneur Center, sent me out to Google to spend a couple weeks with them and their Google for Entrepreneurs. And they were taking a look under the hood at the technology, and it was them that actually were like, "Hey, this is cool, but have you thought about using this to match master recording and publishing?" And I was like, "No, I haven't." And they were like, "Well, that might be a better business." And turns out they were right. And that's been my career since Dart has folded and whatnot. So, but yeah, so. I don't know if there's a lesson there. Like, again, I don't necessarily, in terms of product, I don't recommend starting with the hardest problem. I recommend getting something in front of people as quickly as possible and listening and learning from them, right? And then iterating as quickly as you can.
But if you think about that, you were not trained as a technologist, right? You were not a software engineer. You had to learn that on your own, right? And by the way, I teach Python programming now for data science. I've never taken a programming class in my life, right? I'm a statistician and a business person more than I am a computer scientist. So you had to go, what gets you to dive into something? Because I'll give you an example real quick. And we've got a question we got to go back to. I want to make sure that we hit any questions. I'll take a look at one, and you can help us as well, Tom, to get any questions up. But my first database I ever built, I moved to, I went to MTSU, I was in Murfreesboro, and I was working for a campaign finance company, and they wanted to build a database for a guy running for Senate in Illinois. And they said, "Can you do it?" I had no idea how to create a database. I knew how it worked and I've used them, but I've never actually created my own. And so I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." And so I had to go buy books to do it because there was no Google at the time. We're talking a while ago. And the guy running for Illinois senator, you may have heard of him. And I apologize to my students because I know I already told this story to them. Barack, what's his last name? Obama, right? So I'm literally, when he ran for US senator, I created his database. And I had no idea that that's what I was doing. And I got paid $2 an hour to do that, at the end of the day, because I made so many mistakes, but I just dove in. And that to me was something that I think that you did. I mean, you just said, "I'm going to go solve this problem. I need technology." Okay. And you went for it. And I think that is something that is incredibly important for people to just sometimes you just got to go do it and make the mistakes. It's okay.
And I think that's where ignorance can really help you, right? It's like, if you don't know you're not supposed to do something, you just kind of go with what you think you're supposed to do, right? With distribution, for example, I was like, okay, let's just build a distribution company, right? And I was very fortunate in that I worked at Apple, so I was able to ask questions like, who should I talk to? But, I just went and asked Apple, like, "Hey, if I build this, like, would that help you? And can I send data to you?" And they were like, "Well, yeah, because like classical music is hard, and if you do that, we'll take it." And I was like, and then you ask the follow-up question. It's like, "Thank you. Who should I talk to at Spotify? Who should I talk to at Amazon?" Right?
Yep.
And then before you know it, you're distributing to everyone. So I think, just kind of doing it, not knowing you're not supposed to do something is it can be a gift, right?
Yeah. And if you're in a market like Nashville, where people are pretty gracious with their time, believe it or not, ask people to coffee. Like, I've had 3 coffees this week, and I'm like, people ask, and you go, and it's amazing the connections you can make, and just say, I don't know how to do this. Who should I talk to? Right.
And what I keep coming back to as a think through everything we're talking about. You asked a question earlier, Charlie, like, hey, like, what do recommend? Like, how do you get through the hard times?
Yeah.
Was your question, and you're touching on it there as well, which is community, right?
Yeah.
Like having a community of people that you trust and that you can open up to, that but also that you can ask to coffee, right?
Mhm.
And so it's what's cool about being a human is we get to do life together, and that can absolutely suck, but it's also how we accomplish like great things is by doing it together, right?
Yeah, well, I think we're getting close to the end here. Tom, if we have some questions and you want to point us to those, if they're music related, I'll point them over to Chris. And if they're data
Let's see,
related, I'll
what
have you
Cass was
take it.
saying was streaming economics will create new opportunities, MLC audits and auditing, class action lawsuits, protect, and then you have some great links to protect the working musician. Definitely. Two things to take away from there. First is take action, right? If there is something you can, sign to let people know, hey, I want to be paid, please, right? Like go do that. One of the ones that come to mind is like Sound Exchange, for example. Like, you think to sign up for your PRO, but maybe you don't think of Sound Exchange, or maybe you don't think of DMLC, like Cass points out, right? And so yeah, go and take action yourself everywhere you can, right? And that takes me back to, and I know we're running out of time, but I just wanted to say, like, the biggest gap in getting the creator paid is a dissemination of knowledge, right? Just knowing what you're supposed to do. And
Mhm.
then once you have the knowledge, having the time to do it, right?
Yeah.
To take action on it. Because right now, as a creator or a musician specifically, you enter metadata when you distribute. You enter that same data with ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, right? Whoever you have. You enter the same data with Sound Exchange. You enter the same data with the MLC. If you're in sync, you got to enter that same data. And
Yeah.
so, like Pareto's principle holds true. Unfortunately, you spend 20% of your time creating, 80% entering data, and that is a data opportunity that can be solved, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we did a hackathon back in, I think it was November of 21, with Chris Arend and the folks over at Mechanical Licensing Collective, and we had students at Belmont looking at the data saying, wait a minute, that's me. And I was like, and I'm not registered. And so they weren't getting paid. And they noticed by doing a hackathon that they didn't do the right steps, right? And they didn't know. They're a student, they created it, they put it out there, and all of a sudden they had royalties that they could collect. And it was pretty cool to see that. So yeah, I think there is a lot to that. And that's every industry, right? There's health literacy, music literacy, data literacy, and we all struggle. And a lot of our problems go back to just what the heck's the process, and that's hard. That's why
yeah,
we need to automate it, right, and make it easier for us. You press one button and it happens. And we need people
exactly.
like you at Artist Growth to do that for us. And for me, folks, I'm in academia, but I think you're going to hear more of me, maybe in the music area, but outside of academia. I've started to do a lot of speaking. I've got my little podcast. I'm looking to create the educational opportunities for folks. If you ever want to get a hold of me, I'll throw my website's just my name. And please reach out. I want to grab coffee with anybody. If you're a student, absolutely. I have never, ever not said yes to a student. And that includes the 33 in my one class and my other ones in my other, because what if 30 minutes with somebody can change their life? And I always remember that. And I've had the stories of people coming up to me at the gym saying, I remember when you were mean to me and said, do this, you dummy, and get your life going. And I did. And I'm like, oh, how do you like that? So,
That's
all right, I got to hear a last big advice, and then we'll throw it back to Tom. Anything comes to the top of the mind there, Chris?
Schedule everything. Time is our most valuable asset, right?
You are a productivity nut, aren't you?
I love it. It's great. Yeah. And so yeah, throw everything on a calendar and make sure you have time for yourself and hit the trails, get outside.
There you go. I love it. Tom, we're throwing it back to you.
I hate for this one to end.
Ah.
You all could carry on all day long. I promised the audience they would leave today more inspired than they arrived. I guarantee you everyone feels that way. So thank you for delivering the goods, gentlemen. You two are really, really something. Chris, I've always been a fan of yours. You know that from the dark days. So pleased that our mutual friend Mark Montgomery introduced us many, many years ago. And here's a little bit of smartest people in the room / who knew trivia. Exactly 7 years ago today, Chris McMurtry spoke at the second event I ever hosted, called the smartest people in the, called Who Knew. And the poster of it is right there on up in the corner of my wall.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Oh, I didn't know it either. Facebook told me that.
That's great.
That's great.
Anyway, Charlie, thank you for all the work you're doing to help create data as a religion. And to the students, listen to your professor. He knows what he's talking about. To the audience, come back next week. We're going to have another really, really interesting session featuring Gloria Gaynor. Yes, the queen of disco.
Dude, that's awesome.
I'll be here.
Uplifting story. She's got a documentary coming out in Valentine's Day. Anyway, with my customary sign off, I'll simply say, be nice to one another. Y'all take care.
Thank you all. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Charlie.
Thanks, Tom. Wonderful, Chris.